Welcome back to the Lumbertron podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Woods. Well, are you ready to get mystic? Today's guest, John Latta, is a wonderful human and a newly published author. He's gracious enough to have me over to his home to talk about his new book, Synchronicity of Love. I even got a signed copy. It chronicles his adventures in becoming a more spiritual human, opening his heart and following his dreams. Like literally, it's dream wisdom. I joined John in his home office in Redmond, Washington to share in some of that wisdom. Let's tune in. Welcome to the Lumbertron podcast.
Thank you, Tyler. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's the best podcast that no one's ever heard of.
Oh, well, we've heard of it.
That's right. You're my first guest to give me a book.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's got to be a first.
Gotta be a first. And you so lovingly provided all kinds of wonderful interview questions. But the question is, who are you?
Wow, you're going to open with that one, huh?
Yeah. We got free time. Who are you? Right now.
Can anybody truthfully answer that question?
Well, in this moment, who's showing up?
Who's showing up? Well, let's see. John, the author, is here. John, who's nervous about being vulnerable, is here. John, who hasn't been on any podcast, but he's kind of excited, is here. John, who knows it's all going to be fine, is here too. How about you?
Oh, how about me? Tyler that's excited is here. Tyler that's nervous about being in a nice house is here. Tyler that wants to be polite is here, which is funny. But Tyler that wants to be ridiculous is also here. So yeah. We got a nice gathering here.
Yeah. This could be an interesting mix.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm holding this wonderful book. Mm-hmm. It's called The Synchronicity of Love. Mm-hmm. Stories that heal, transform, and awaken. Mm-hmm. Oh, John David Latta wrote this book. That's you.
That's me.
Oh, my goodness gracious. When did you know you were going to write a book?
When did I know I was going to write a book?
Did you ever know?
Yeah, probably 20 years ago, but it sure took me a long time to get around to it.
Yeah.
I liked writing short stories. That's part of the reason the book is constructed the way it is. A lot of the stories had appeared on Facebook before. I tried to make them really short so people would read them on Facebook. Some of them were probably a little too short just for that reason, but I was trying to capture people like myself that have short attention spans. I loved reading books when I was younger. I read books voraciously. And
what kind of books?
Well, when I was younger, I read books. Honestly, my obsession was with fishing, weirdly as it sounds. And so I read tons of books, magazines. I wanted to fish, specifically fly fish, all over the world. That was my passion. And in the winter, I liked to ski. And so I'd say most of the books, I had somewhat of an interest in politics, which was really more of an interest in arguing than a real diehard interest in politics. Had an interest in philosophy for a while and read books on that. But I don't think I read any fictional books to speak of until I was in my 40s. It was always, the book was like something to learn, something I could do better, and then, in the book, the book opens with everything falling apart in my life, everything that could possibly go wrong all at the same time. I started reading books that I hadn't generally read before, psychology books, self-help books, and grudgingly eased my way into books about spirituality. But I had never read a book like that up until everything fell apart in my life. And then started reading fictional books and realizing there was a lot more to them than I ever imagined. And so
I was going to say, I heard a lot of the themes of all these books you've described are books about doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, how's that like your life? Does that track for you?
It definitely tracks for me. I would definitely say I've slowed down. I can't believe it. My wife says I'm teaching her how to slow down. I can't believe that. So I must have slowed down somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you remember, one of the early chapters in the book was I was in a group therapy setting, and it seemed like within about a month or two, I was the only guy with 10 women and 2 women therapists. Mm-hmm. And all the women were getting on me about, John, you're all about doing, you should try being. I'm like, what the hell is being, So that has definitely been a shift too, into more, I think, what feels like allowing.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't get the wonderful chance to read your book or is curious about it, I mean, how could you begin to sum up? What is this book about? It's about your life.
Well, so the title,
Synchronicity of Love,
which I loved, not everybody loves. Uh-huh. My wife wanted it to be something like, the transformation of a rational man, the transformation of an overly masculine man into something more different and, more whole, more expansive. And so, but if you remember in the book, it opens with everything going wrong in my life. And I went to my first ever spiritual retreat, 10 days out in the desert. And I didn't really have a lot of spiritual experiences, but it was the first in my life I ever felt truly connected to other people. I hadn't realized how much I'd kept people at a distance before. Uh-huh. And that was really cool for me. And let's see. I forgot where I was going with that. I just slipped up. But yeah, I think, thank you very much. The retreat that I was at, the teacher taught nothing. Of course, it was more than that. But on the surface, it was nothing more than heart-centered meditation and shadow work. Heart-centered meditation, shadow work, and a lot of dream work. And I took to it like I just wanted it. So even when I came home, I was heart-centered meditation before I went to bed, when I got up in the morning, sometimes at lunchtime. And he just kept, check in with your heart, try and put yourself in that space of unconditional love. And it felt like to me, the more that I did that, the more life started to unfold. All the experiences I had in the book felt like one happened, and then when that one was done, then I was ready for the next one, and then that one, and then the next one. And there was this odd sense that, I want to say life got easier, because that's not exactly true, because there were some later chapters where life sucked again. Uh-huh. And yet I just felt like there was a flow I'd never experienced before. And I think that's what I wanted people to know is I believe that if they spend more time in the heart center, in that space of unconditional love, however they create it, life starts to flow more easily. It's almost like the red carpet just gets rolled out. And it started getting really weird, especially for somebody who's kind of hell-bent on doing things. Life got easier. That's about the best way I can put it.
And so love and synchronicity were huge parts of that
They're
flow.
Connected. Yeah, that was my experience. The more love, the more synchronistic events start to happen. I mean, eerie things, just unexpected things. So it's just sometimes you kind of felt like you won the lottery every day. So yeah.
So before this retreat out in the desert, did you have any wisdom from your dreams or anything like that? No.
I did have, weirdly, when I was 13, I have a shockingly precognitive dream, but that was the sum total of my entire spiritual experiences. I had not gone to church for 30 years. I didn't read spiritual books, practice. I just thought it was hocus pocus, make-believe, stuff people just made up to make themselves feel good. And I just kept it as far away as possible. I'd had dreams before,
Sure.
I think I went and saw a couple scary movies in high school, and I had nightmares about them. Laying there in bed and having a nightmare, and your black cat jumps in the window because it's hot some night, lands on you. But I didn't. And in the book, early on, it mentions the teacher just said, dreams are a way into seeing into your unconscious, the part, a huge part of us that we're not conscious of.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the dreams will show you things about who you are in your life, and patterns are unfolding. So you don't have to stumble into what feels like fate anymore. You know what I mean? In other words, you just have more tools to direct your life. And I was watching him work with people in their dreams. I'm like, how the hell did you come up with that conclusion from that dream? Well, I didn't understand it. Yeah. There's a language of metaphor and myth I didn't understand. There's a language of intuition I didn't understand, but I really wanted to learn. And so he taught us, if you want to remember your dreams, put a little notebook or recorder, phone, whatever, next to your bed. And as you're falling asleep, imagine yourself completely naked, standing on the edge of a cliff with your back to the abyss. And as you drift into that space where you're starting to fall asleep, fall backwards off the cliff in total trust and ask for a dream. And I did it. And the first night I had like a dream that was like all of 3 seconds. And it was just a snippet. But I kept asking and asking, and it took about a week or two, and more started to come, and I would sometimes in the middle of the night wake up.
Just wake up and just write it down really fast.
Yeah, and then I don't know what the period of time was, a month, maybe 3 months. Geez, I had to turn the dream machine off. Suddenly it was like the opposite. And it was amazing and fascinating, and I still love it to this day. It's such an incredible source of creativity, too. So,
wow, that's huge. Yeah. So dreams were just kind of like guiding you to things that you didn't even know, like, is this next? Do I have to do this? How are you able to interpret these dreams? Did you?
Well, I can honestly say it's like learning to speak Chinese. It literally is, because, Chinese is a language of symbols. It's different than our language. And the symbols can have a meaning. You may have things that show up in your dreams that only Tyler would know what they mean because of your life experience. I had some things like that only I would know.
Yeah.
And so there's Tyler's meanings. There's cultural meanings. Like if you were part of a church, you would know what symbols like Christian church, Jesus, Mary, the cross, those symbols would be meaningful to you. And then there's sort of like a greater collective meaning for symbols. And so and my experience has been, and I've read others that dream a lot like me who said the same thing, a lot of dreams are just psychological in nature. The body, it's trying to slough off stress, the psyche trying to make sense. If you're going through a stressful time, you'll have stressful dreams, you know what I mean? But every now and then, a profound dream that sounds like something completely different, where it literally feels like some being is speaking to you. And so some of the dreams I can look at and go, I think that's just a reflection of the stress I'm going through. And then every now and then a dream comes where I'm like, oh my God, I have to pay attention to that.
Yeah. And so when you got those messages, did they make you focus on them in the world? Like look for what you saw in your dream? Or when you wanted to pay attention to your dream, how did you change? What did you do differently?
Yeah. Let's see. I didn't always do things differently. Sometimes I just saw things differently. I saw people differently. I saw situations differently. I might be mad at somebody and have a dream about them, and suddenly I was like, oh shit, I was feeling compassion for them. So it wasn't always a command to go do something. It was more like it was changing how I was seeing Tyler.
Yeah.
How I was seeing my wife, how I was seeing situations differently.
You have a section in the book that's like all the different types of dreams that you have. Like dreams as warnings, dreams of unities, dreams of dreams, dreams of destiny. Yeah.
Well, and that's why I encourage everybody, just start writing them down. Even if they seem like gibberish, they don't make sense. There's a dream I shared in there where I must have had 100 dreams like this, and it was the same dream, same form every time. I'm somewhere fun, like I'm on vacation, I'm hiking, I'm fishing, I'm snorkeling, I'm skiing, and I'm having a great time. And every dream, a woman taps me on the shoulder and says, "John, it's time to go home." And I'm like, no, I don't want to go home. "John, it's time to go home." No, I don't want to go home. And then came the 101st dream where I was like, excuse my French, fuck it. Okay, I give up. I'm ready to go home. Boom! This scene shifts, and I'm out of this beautiful mountainous meadow area, and there's 3 paths in front of me, and the left-hand path has tons of people on it like a freeway. The right-hand path has people on it too, but it's kind of hidden and shrouded in mystery and like a fog or smoke. And there's a path right in front of me without a soul on it, and I've got my stuff with me, and I start walking down the middle path. Yeah. And I think that dream was trying to say, like, and so what happened for me at that point, and it happened slowly over time, is a lot of the things I was passionate about, I became less passionate about. And that was a difficult phase. And I think that was that, like, oh, I love fishing, I love skiing, I love movies, I love to do this. And that middle path is more of a balanced, centered equanimity path. And so that's why I say, even if you don't understand the dreams, write them down, because you'll see the patterns. And then when you see something shift, you'll go, oh my God, that happened differently in the dream. And almost inevitably, it starts to affect your outer life as well. It's not always sort of a, John, you need to go give Tyler a call, you know? Sometimes it is. And so that's what I gleaned after, I can't believe it's been this long, 20 years of recording my dreams, is there's a wide variety of dreams and some really amazing things happen. You just got to kind of open to it, pay attention to it.
Yeah. Do you think your spiritual journey would be where you are without the dream work?
I don't.
Yeah.
It's been hard because I've learned since then that some people just aren't visual. My wife is not visual. It's really hard for her to remember a dream. And I've met some wonderful spiritual teachers that say, you don't need to be visual to be spiritual. Some people just know things. Some people go by their intuition. They go by their gut. There's a lot of ways people take in information beyond just their 5 senses, you know what I mean? Some people, it sounds kind of crazy, literally hear voices. They're more auditory oriented, like almost like an angel or a guide whispering in the ear. And that's how I've actually had some of those experiences. They're really amazing.
Yeah, I like to touch on those, and that also feels kind of validating as someone who's like, maybe I don't see things like that. I feel like I want to, but yeah. So you've had some kind of like miraculous experiences, and I almost get the sense, almost like begrudgingly sometimes, like you didn't ask for this, or you weren't expecting this for sure.
That's actually what made it really cool for me, because I knew I wasn't making it up, because I was like, what the hell is this? You know, I'd like try to email people, I'd try and look up books, I'd look things up online. Like there's a story in there where I was going through a long period of what felt like emptiness. And I heard somebody say the word dispassion once, and I went, that's it. I'm not empty. I'm just not passionate in the same way, but it's driving me crazy. Like I should be passionate, damn it. I like being passionate. And I have this dream where an Asian woman shows up and says, John, you're a high K2. That's it. I'm like, what the hell? I felt really important. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? So the mountain K2, I'm a big mountain. Yeah, I just like, I don't know what this dream means. But I'm typing it into Google, and I typed it in phonetically, like CATU and KATU, and I kept getting like radio station, KATU. And, but all of a sudden, Google said, did you mean KETU? And I look it up. Oh my God, there's this whole archetype in the Vedic astrological system on K2, and it's about a person that's no longer passionate, who's kind of being emptied. And I was like, talk about feeling really affirmed. And it made the journey through the lack of passion, emptiness, feel like, oh, this is important too. You know what I mean? And so, and funny, I looked up online and found out there's a Vedic astrologer in Edmonds named Dennis Flaherty. He's been a Vedic astrologer for 30 years. So I went and met him, and he's this funny old guy. And he goes, John, I meet people from many walks of life, but this is the first time I met somebody because of a dream. But yeah, let's talk about the effect of K2 in your chart. So that was an example.
Yeah. So again, the dreams coming back, but you also talked about like seeing things like energy or just like things like that. Could you talk more about that experience? Was it like a visual thing? Did you feel it in your body?
So I haven't had very many experiences of what they call clairvoyance, where, a typical clairvoyant, to be sitting here looking at Tyler, is going to see the energy field around you. Yeah, and I've talked to people, and they've seen it, extend out more on this side of the body and this side. It can be different colors. It can be shifting. And 2 times in my life I've seen energy around people. Both times I was like, there's something wrong with my eyes? Oh my God, I think I'm actually seeing. But there's a chapter in my book where I was invited to what they called an advanced energy class. And it was a lady that is clairvoyant teaching a class in her living room. And there was, I don't know, 10 or 15 of us. Every person could see energy except for me. And so I'm trying, and then I'm trying to like not try, and I'm trying to not try. And I give up. But then weirdly, this just must be how I see. I have to close my eyes to see. The guy who's sitting next to me, his name was Michael, and he was this young, cool software developer at Microsoft, probably about your age. And I close my eyes and I see this beautiful light inside his body. It's hard to describe. It's like a chandelier made of light, beautiful, and it's protruding from his rear end downward towards the floor. And it's kind of going up and down. If you could imagine the chandelier made of light being raised up and down, and it's going down and it's moving up. And I'm like, even though my eyes are closed, I know I'm seeing it. I'm like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so I tell the teacher, like, oh my God, I saw, Michael, this light. And she goes, oh, that's Michael. He has a terrible time staying in his body. So this is her day-to-day reality. So it was really exciting. And I sometimes wish I had more experiences like that. But
Yeah. But you felt it and you were there. Did you feel like, did you want to study that more afterwards? Did you feel like you want to make that more part of your life? Or were you just able to kind of accept, like, cool, I did this thing?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The answer is yes and yes. I think, part of the reason I wrote the book I did is I wanted to make clear I was still married. I got remarried. I had kids. I had stepkids. I had a demanding job. And so I still had to live a day-to-day life. I was making a living and traveling and, so I had 4 kids and wife. And so there was a lot of demands on my time. And so there were times I was just trying to squeeze all this in on the side sometimes. So I wanted people to know I wasn't, on a 2-year retreat or out at a monastery somewhere.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I was like, come back to work and life and kids and ball games and activities and school and homework. And so there wasn't really the opportunity sometimes. So I think I was more of a dabbler than rather like, oh my God, I want to be clairvoyant. There are teachers out there that will say, everybody's intuitive, everybody's psychic. You just have to practice it. Everybody's clairvoyant, It's admittedly easier for some people than others, but you just have to practice it.
So if anything, you want people to know this book is kind of the story that, like, you're not an abnormal, like, you're a regular guy and you had all these experiences.
Yeah. A couple of people said, John, you're an everyday mystic or a practical mystic. And that's actually a good description.
Practical mystic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What does that word mean to you, mystic?
That's a really good question. It was funny. I talked to another gal, and she said for her a mystic was she's able to meditate and go into oneness. And so that's the mystic. And I've had a few experiences like that. Mine are more of that sort of dream orientation where, and it does seem to be sort of a need to know basis. Like I never know when something is going to appear to me, something's going to talk to me. And so that's my definition of mystic is, and whether you call it guides or angels or your high self or your soul or whatever, God, something is guiding me along the way. And I have faith in that. I sometimes it's like, where have you been?
Yeah.
But I do have faith in that.
Yeah. I was going to ask, do you ever feel like maybe life is being difficult or things are challenging and you feel like, do you have like the uncertainty, like, oh man, where's my guides at? Or you just like, do you have this level of faith and trust that you can let go and be like, I got this, the universe got me? Or is it waver?
Both.
Waver. Yep.
Waver. It's so funny because I've read, a lot of my experiences were so new to me, but it led me to want to read books where other people have had the same or similar experiences because it just somehow felt calming to me. Oh, other people have had this happen too.
Yeah.
And there's a lady who wrote, her name is Lorna Byrne. She's written a whole bunch of books about communicating with angels from birth. And that's her reality. But even her reality is they just pop in when it's their timing. it isn't like they're at her beck and call all the time. You know? A little bit. And, you know, she calls them angels, but she readily admits that whatever it is, somebody else might call them guides because they can take different forms. And but they help her, they guide her, and sometimes they help her, and sometimes they say, no, you can do this on your own. And so a lot of what feels like support to me, it's hysterical, is just when things feel like they're going to hell, I seem to have this infinite playlist of songs in my head. And sometimes they just put a song in my head. I'm like, where the hell did that come from? That's not a song I listened to when I was in my teens or 20s. I never, you know. But I look at the lyrics, it's like the perfect song. It's like the perfect lyrics. And I just kind of chuckle like, okay, I'm making too big a deal out of this.
So sometimes your guides just remind you not to take it so seriously.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Just relax. Yeah.
So one of the questions here I had about being a CEO of a company, what was that transition like to going from probably taking it pretty seriously to not taking it as seriously?
You know, I'm not sure it made me a better CEO because I definitely took it a little less seriously and probably became a lot friendlier and more compassionate with my employees. I wasn't necessarily a hard ass anymore. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but
that's just how you change.
I just got a little softer, you know, more understanding, more forgiving. But I liked who I was becoming, and it was okay for me, instead of getting mad at somebody, just put my arm around them and, hey, let's go for a talk, you know, go for a walk and talk, you know.
Did that change ever rub anyone the wrong way? Business people who thought differently than you? Were you
Well, that was a learning curve for me too. Big learning curve. You can't share these experiences with everybody. Yeah. Well, and even MKP, healing work and stuff, you just, and so the learning curve for me has been to listen to my intuition and say, this is a person you can talk to about this. And my intuition would be screaming at me sometimes, like, don't freaking talk about this, but I would override it and talk about it anyway. And so I kind of understood later, it's like, it's okay to not mix business with, I'm just going to call it healing work or awakening work or spiritual experiences. So I didn't do it all perfectly, Tyler. Yeah.
Write that down.
Yeah. I don't think it was bad, but it was hard. And, you know, sometimes I felt really lucky because when I went to that retreat in the desert and everything seemed to begin to shift, it really began to shift 2 years after that, but it started shifting then. I made just enough spiritual friends via email that I could talk to them via email or phone. Even though my own immediate friends and family, people like coworkers and stuff, I couldn't really talk about a lot of things. So
so you had support in a way.
I had support in a way, and so it was a learning curve to know. Just, you know, it's funny. One of my favorite books of all time, and I think helped open me up, is Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. It is. I mean, I think that whole book is a recipe for anybody, not just people who want to become an artist, but it's just perfect. And she talked in there about how budding artists will sabotage their work because they'll do a piece of work, they'll show it to people, friends and family like, dude, don't quit your day job, that sucks. And that's the end of their career as artists. So she was like, form an Artist's Way group, get together with people that are really supportive. And then when you're ready, you can reveal your art to the world. And if that takes years, then great. Or you never have to reveal it to the world.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
I screwed that up a lot too. So.
You reveal yourself as often as you chose.
Yeah.
How about those morning pages? They'll still have a place in your life?
Not as much, but I go through months in a row where I just write my 3 pages, and oh my God, I got piles and piles. Those boxes are full of journals right there.
I see this one, 2015, 2020, 2010, 2014, 2005, 2009.
Yeah, it probably goes to around 2003, maybe.
Back to the
and so retreats. Those are morning pages and dream journals combined. Sometimes I wake up to my morning pages and have had like a really amazing dream, and so that kind of becomes my morning page. So,
do you ever revisit any of those? Are they just there for?
I do.
Support.
You know, it's funny. I love to go back and reread the dreams. I despise going back and reading my morning pages because I think just when I think I've made so much progress, I realize I've been bitching about the same things for years. And it's funny, Julia Cameron says, just write it and throw it away. Don't save it.
Yeah.
You know, because I think she just, if you remember, she just called it, it's a brain dump.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just sort of like, I'm going to get my stress out on paper so I don't have to carry it with me all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of like, wow, I thought I'd come a long ways. I'm still complaining about the same few things, you know? So.
Yeah. Does the whole experience of, you know, becoming this more spiritual being, does it bring you more compassion for the human parts of the experience? All this stuff that you have to deal with.
Do I get stuck sometimes in my, I've got shit to do, I don't have time for compassion right now? Yes. Do I get stuck in my judgments sometimes? Yes, but way, way, way less. I find I'm so compassionate. And you know, it's funny, I had this discussion with somebody once, and this person said, I tried compassion. I tried being nice to somebody. It didn't work. And I said, that's not compassion. But a lot of people think of compassion as just being nice to somebody. And it can be a nice thing to be compassionate towards others. But my understanding of compassion is literally to try, and it's not always easy, to like, what's this person going through? Where have they been through?
What's it like to be you?
What's it like to be you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from that point, you might want to be nice to them. You might want to give them a meal. You might want to, you know, help them out. Or it could be anything. Maybe a little tough love, you know, maybe just listen. Just listen, you know. Just give them a hug, you know. It's sort of like, because if you can tune into the person and use your intuition, it feels like the intuition is going to tell you what to do or not do. But it isn't always about being nice to them. It's more like I have to get out of my own way, kind of step in their shoes, even if it's only a little bit. And I come away, another aspect of compassion for me is I think every freaking person's journey can be hard. Could be really hard. And if you remember in the book, I have a number of dreams, because I think one of the things I struggled with when I was younger is putting leaders up on pedestals. Okay, with your brother, and then knocking him down later. Yeah, and so I had a dream about the Dalai Lama, a dream about Barack Obama, a dream about George Bush, you know, George Bush Jr., a dream about a spiritual teacher friend of mine, and every one I was kind of shown like, their job is fucking hard. Like, and I just suddenly realized, like, God, you know, and so, yeah, I don't nearly as much going around looking at other people thinking, oh, that guy's got it made, it's easy. You just don't know.
Yeah. A lot more just humanity a little bit. Yeah. Well, I cracked open the piece of paper with questions on it, and I saw the word Kundalini, and I was like, oh, let's dive into that.
Okay.
You had this process, one would call it Kundalini Awakening.
Right.
And of course, for you, it was, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
so yeah, say more about that.
Oh, God. So
when did this experience happen? What is all this about?
Well, the first thing I want to say is a number of people have read the book and said the same thing, like, how do I get in touch with that Kundalini? And the answer is, I have no freaking idea. There's tons of processes, but I'm not sure. I just think for some reason it's just meant to happen, if it's meant to happen or when it's supposed to happen. But so yeah, the story was I had my company and I had a chance to sell one of my products on QVC, the home shopping network. So excited about it. Nervous, never been on live TV before, and they said because of channel servers, they get 700,000 new viewers every 60 seconds. And so the pitch, I had 7 minutes, and they said, keep repeating the same pitch every minute, and it just make it casual, like it's a talk over the backyard fence, you know, with a neighbor. And so I've never done it before, but I didn't screw up on live TV, sold a fair amount of product, not tons, but, you know, nothing embarrassing. It was just kind of a moderate amount. And I went back to my hotel room in Philadelphia, and I couldn't sleep. And I felt all this joy in my body. And I thought it was because I didn't screw up on TV, and I felt the relief. You know? And I also thought maybe it was the time difference because, 3 hours different. I just flown in from Seattle that day and I just couldn't seem to go to sleep. Anyway, I'm laying in bed at midnight, still like happy, can't fall asleep. And all of a sudden I have this, what feels like a huge orgasm in my perineum area that is hard to put into words, but you ever seen those mushrooms? You step on them and they have like a puff of smoke that comes out of them. You ever seen those? Well,
spores.
Yeah, that's what it felt like in my perineum. This poof. Oh, I felt so much pleasure, and I'm like, what the hell was that? But oh my God, it felt so good. And then came another one, and another one, and then another one, and so half of me is like, what the fuck is going on? And the Catholic boy in me is like, what is going on? Another part of me is, I don't know, but it sure feels good. And so that went on for quite a long time. And I think about 3 a.m, I had to jump out of bed and try to, I have my extremities had all this energy. I was trying, like I drank a bunch of caffeine. I'm trying to shake it off because I have to get up in 2 hours to fly home. And so anyway, I walk around, I'm trying to shake this energy off and slept for maybe an hour or two, got on the plane, flew home, emailed a bunch of people like, what the heck is this? And they're like, oh, it's Kundalini Rising. Looking it up, I'm like, well, what does that word mean? I hadn't even heard the word before. And so I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, that kind of sounds kind of similar. And then from that day forward, about every second or third day, I would call it the energy would come back. And it would be tuck my kids in bed, because at that time I'm a single dad with 2 kids. And I've got custody of them. And so I tuck my kids in bed and get in bed, and usually about an hour after I've fallen asleep, here comes the energy, and it wakes me up. And every single time it's different. I have profoundly beautiful visions, this beautiful, pleasurable energy that's just like, I call it like orgasmic honey. You can imagine a slow motion orgasm, like just it felt like honey. I mean, it was so beautiful. But I had this love-hate relationship where it would go on all night long. And at some point I'd say the same thing, like, I just need to get some sleep. I have to go to work. I have to get my kids up, And so it would go away. I'd get up, take my, get my kids set, school, go to work, and drag my rear end through work all day because I'm so tired. And basically like, I don't know what this energy is, but please don't come tonight. I'm so tired. And it wouldn't. It's like it just knew. And then after a couple of days, I'd be like, oh, I kind of missed that. It's like a drug, I'm really kind of like, you can come back now. And it did. And I shared one experience in the book of like one night, it was just like having your doors blown wide open. I couldn't even capture it all on paper. I saw so much. It was just just so grace-filled. But I wanted to emphasize in the book, like, it was really taxing on my energy system. At the same time, there was like sexual energy, like times 50. Like I was just horny as hell. I had countless dreams where I had sex with beautiful goddesses night after night after night. And I'd get up the next day like I'd had sex all night long. And again, just drag through my day. And there's still that part of me that's just like, what is it? Oh, God. I was honestly terrified that I was going to be altered in some way, that I couldn't be a dad anymore. I couldn't be a parent anymore. I couldn't run my company anymore, Yeah. And so, and so it was 75% of the time it was wonderful. 25% of the time I was in a lot of fear. So, and I've read a lot of books on Kundalini. Everybody's experiences are both similar and different. But what they all had in common is the biggest fireworks are in the beginning. And that was too. And, to be honest, Tyler, there was a lot of sadness because as the months and years went by, it started to fade. And if you kind of have an addiction to intensity, which I tended to, and, it's sort of like giving up the drug and not having something to replace it with. And pretty soon I'm like, where are you now? I'm ready for more.
How long did that go on?
Years. I'm going to guess 4 years, but the most intense was probably the first 6 months. Yeah. And Yeah, and I know one of the most famous books, I think it's called Living with Kundalini by Gopi Krishna. He wrote one of the first books about it and wrote it with incredible detail. I think he said the whole process, start to finish, took 12 years. But he had a different experience than I did. So the only thing I can say is there was a lot of energy, a lot of visuals, a lot of I told you a lot of the experiences were unbelievably pleasurable. Some of them were horrifyingly terrifying. Like it felt like heart paddles being slapped in my chest, and I was just being shocked. I would feel energy that felt like it was weighed 20,000 pounds crushing me. And so I'd wake up sweating and scared. And sexual energy beyond belief. It was fun. It was exciting, but it was scary too. I mean, every night I'd get in bed all by myself, like, oh, shit, now what's going to happen?
What's going to show up tonight?
Yeah, sometimes I had, like I said, I don't generally see things with my eyes open when I'm awake. I mean, I can count on maybe 2 hands the number of times that's actually happened. But there was times I would see like this bubble floating above me, like with blue liquid in it, and it was pouring into my body, and I'm just watching it happen. And there were some times where, and luckily, again, same thing. I felt, talk about synchronicity. This feels like every time I get terrified or something, I'd find the perfect book where somebody said, yeah, I went through that too. It's like, oh, okay, I feel better.
Yeah. And so hearing like, this is Kundalini Awakening, did that bring you to the level of like, oh, okay, like this is fine? Or was it still just as terrifying, knowing that other people have gone through it?
Well, it helped, but I'm not sure what the timeline was. I want to say I was into it for 6 months to a year before I started to make peace with it. And then it kind of became like, oh, good, I'm becoming enlightened. This is kind of cool. Well,
that
but
be
it
your
didn't really
identity
work
at
out
the
that
time.
way,
Yeah.
So I was, and if I'm being really honest too, there was a part of me that kind of felt special. There's a kind of a specialness. And so imagine when it starts to go away, like, where's all the dreams and visions and experiences now?
It's like losing your superpowers.
Now I just don't care about anything anymore. Nobody told me about this part of the journey. And in many ways, that was the most difficult part of the journey. It was not the scary energy, which was still kind of exciting. It was when it all started to go away. But again, it was really helpful because there's a lot of books that said, like, some people talked about feeling like they were special and God was giving us something special, and now God had abandoned them. And so there's this feeling like, did I do something wrong? And you don't even know how you got it to begin with. And so, let's just say it plays with your head a lot. Yeah.
I bet. Being attached to like whatever is happening to you as identity or like a label and things like that.
Yeah.
I imagine that made things really difficult when you said your passions were disappearing.
Yeah.
Like did you feel like you defined yourself by those things that you wanted to do, or like fishing and skiing?
Definitely defined myself that way, but I liked being that way too.
Yeah.
Like I'm in high school. My life goal was to retire young so I could go fishing and skiing when the fishing and skiing was good. Because I didn't want my early career, I was a store manager for QFC, and we didn't even get weekends off, and we worked long hours. So you can imagine, like, if Tuesday they got a foot of new...
I don't want this.
Yeah, well, if they got a foot of new snow last night, well, shoot, I have to work, And so I wanted this, like, I want to go fishing all over the world, skiing all over the world. I want to go wherever it's the best. And so that was my whole... It sounds kind of shallow. That was my whole motivation in life, was to go play.
Yeah, to go play. And how does play show up in your life now?
That's a great question. I think play shows up in my life now. My wife and I have really good playful banter with each other every day. Like, it's amazing. And we can be goofy and silly with each other. But, to this day, I don't feel the same sense of, like, oh, I can't wait to go skiing. Oh my God, that was the best skiing ever. And I kind of miss that,
To be excited about something that much.
But it's just, if anything, if I do that, it's kind of like how it used to be. And it seems more important for me to kind of go in more centered and with no expectations. Actually, that's actually become more fun now. But I was not that kind of a person for 40, 50 some odd years.
Yeah. So being centered as opposed to trying to recapture the magic or the of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been a huge part of coming back to that middle path dream. It just seems like life is about staying centered, which doesn't mean I can't laugh or anything, but it just feels more balanced now. It feels calmer now. It feels more like equanimity now. I forget, but if I stay in that lane, life goes really well for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of practices do you have for yourself when you find yourself at an extremity, one of the poles?
Going for a walk. I like to say walking cures all ills. I have 5 acres here, so I have a riding mower, John Deere mower. So I go out and sit in my mower for 2 hours and mow the grass. That's actually really good. I think exercise, time alone. One of my favorite things to do, it sounds funny, is get in the car and just drive to Eastern Washington back by myself. I know there's something about open space that just feels really peaceful and recentering to me. Everything feels new and possible again. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, the things that you do.
Yeah.
I don't know how to ask this, but like, where is your sense of self-love been in all this? What is your relationship with loving yourself? Has it changed throughout this experience? Have you developed more of a relationship with yourself?
So I don't think I was consciously seeking to love myself when I went to that first retreat, but he taught heart-centered meditation. And, the more you hang out in your heart center with sincerity, it's sort of like running a bath. And imagine the water is love and you're immersing yourself in love. And so I think I just started to love myself as a consequence of that. I didn't enter it because I hated myself. Does that make sense? So yeah. I know a lot of people really struggle with things like shame and especially lack of self-love. And ironically, when I went to that retreat, he had us, one of the exercises was go out to the desert, find a place that feels right for you, and I want you to meditate on loving yourself. It was so hard for people. In fact, I found out about this retreat because Michael Crichton, the author, had been to it 20 years before me. That's how I found out about it. And he couldn't do it. Like, he would sit down, start to meditate on self-love. Oh, this is the wrong spot. It's too hot. I mean, he just gave up. He goes, I could not meditate on loving myself. It was just hard. And he knew it was hard. And he could do everything else in the retreat except for sit down and love himself. And so... so I don't know if that answers your question, but spending time in that space of what feels like love or unconditional love and compassion, I get mad. I have off days, but I don't think, and I get mad at myself, but I don't stay stuck there very long. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the awareness is there to I'm stuck.
Yeah, and so today, I don't think that's an issue. I would.
Yeah. Well, here's an opportunity for some vulnerability. You talked about other people's having struggles with like shame or lack of confidence.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with the word shadow.
Yeah.
The parts of myself I hide, repress, or deny.
Yeah.
What are some of those parts that you've uncovered that you've had to deal with?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you the first one. Probably the reason I stayed away from religion. My first shadow was some like mean-ass Ayatollah kind of guy. Like, I think I could be the leader of some Middle Eastern country, like lead the Taliban and use religion as my, sword somehow. So that was a big one. I think, raised Catholic in a family that didn't show feelings or emotions. And as a little kid, I used to say, how come everybody else's family can tell sex jokes, but not our family? So there was a lot of, I don't know if shame is the right word, but it took me much later in life to fully embrace my sexuality. And so that was something I would kind of sweep under the rug and not talk about. I was I was much more confident in the work world than I was in relationships and sexuality. So relationships is another one. I've come a long ways with relating to others. I think I told you when I went to that retreat, like I just hadn't really noticed, like I keep everybody at a distance, and it felt so good to not.
Yeah, it was just your way of being in the world. It felt natural. Yeah,
so shadow number 1 is domineering, need to be right, need to control. And I remember that like yesterday. That was like we were starting to do shadow work, and here came like in my day a really well-known leader in the Middle East. I can't remember if he was in charge of Iran or Iraq at the time. Was Ayatollah Khomeini. It's like, okay, here's shadow number 1 for you, John. It was like this mean, stern-looking Ayatollah. And then I think a lot of work, honestly, around sexuality, connecting to others vulnerably without any fear. And Wendy knows even today, like I'm pretty open and vulnerable about things, but I still can blush when I talk about certain aspects of sexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if it's a shadow thing, but I'm still learning a lot about feelings, and I don't think I was unfeeling, but
it's limited vocabulary.
Yeah, it's just like, and I think, okay, I'm going to generalize, and I hate doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Warning, generalization coming.
Yeah, here comes John's projection. But I have observed in MKP that a certain portion of men, and maybe a majority of men, struggle with feelings as well, and they don't like feeling feelings, Now, I've met some men that literally were numb. They didn't feel anything. If anything came out, it was anger or maybe laughter, and that was it. That was the entire range of their feeling. And so I'm learning to feel feelings more. I'm learning to allow feelings more. I'm learning to not let myself be consumed by feelings. I'm learning not to be afraid of other people's feelings. So, you know anything about that?
That's a big one, yeah. Now, I met you through the Mankind Project, sitting in circle.
Yeah.
I called it Feelings Anonymous when I first started.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something true.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did that get started?
Oh, I can tell you exactly. That's a fun story.
Yeah.
So there was a gentleman in MKP and his wife together. They formed their own group called Something New, I think is what it was called. And they decided, because she was in a woman's group and he was in a Mankind Project, it was like, what if we combined the best of the two and we make it co-ed? And, and so it'd be like a group for men and women. And it launched, and a lot of people, in fact, it was once a month, and I was hosting it here in my house. And big turnout at first, maybe 18 people were coming at a time. And but it started bogging down, my opinion, because the gal had too many rules. Oh my God, it was like, it was turning into this big bureaucracy. And it felt like, she had a lot of issues around fear and safety, I think. But she had so many rules that people would be there for 2 hours before we even started to do anything. And so little by little, the group got smaller and smaller and smaller. And pretty soon it was me, the husband, the wife, and one other person. It was just 4 people. And they were sad. They're like, we should just put this to bed. Everything has its day in the sun. It's just not going to happen. And I blurted out, this is the strangest thing, Tyler, because I wasn't thinking this in advance. I blurted out, I said, what if we just had a group with like a potluck and we just did a check-in? Oh, if you want to do that, John, that's okay. It's like, I think I'm going to do that. So that's how it started. And, my favorite time in Mankind Project usually is the lover round. I actually enjoy the check-in process more than anything. I want to hear about you. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know what you're feeling. Like, what's going on? And the other stuff, the work is great. All the other rounds are great. But my favorite was always the lover. Probably because some part of me is still learning to sink into my feelings and allow the feelings of others. And, you felt it in Circle. When a man shares what's going on in his life vulnerably, but not just from his head, but from his body and heart too, you feel it. When he does it, then the next guy does it, and the next guy does it.
It's compassion practice.
Yeah,
you get to understand how everyone's going through life.
I totally love that. And so that was the genesis of Something True. It was just going to be a potluck, circle up, and everybody check in. And, the first time, honestly, because the other group had shrunk down to only 4 people, and it was really the founders, we had 30 people for the first Something True, and I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know that many people were going to come. And some guys in MKP talked us into splitting the group into 2. So we had one group of 15 in the living room and one 15 in the family room. But that was the only time, because after that, everybody said, I wanted to know what you guys were doing. So even if it's a huge group, we've just done it all together.
Yeah.
And I think it's been 7 years now. Keep in mind, the last 2 years of COVID didn't really do it much, but probably did it 30 times altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the least we had was 15 or 16. We had 40 one time. Wow. And yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. I was actually shocked at how, and it was fun. Yeah. I mean, I kind of liked it. A lot of people liked it.
Met some pretty great people there, did you?
Yeah. No, and that's the other thing is I met my wife, and people would knock at the front door like, who the hell are you? And how'd you find out about this? Oh, well, so-and-so told me I should come to this thing. That's what happened with Wendy. So, yeah. Literally, a friend of a friend invited Wendy, said, hey, this guy John's doing this thing, you should come. And that's how we met.
Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah. That's amazing. So the synchronicity continues.
It does, yeah.
So what are you going to do now that you've written this book?
Well, I'm now playing first-time self-published author. That's not true. I actually have a publishing company, but they're not doing a lot of marketing. So which is kind of the nature of this for most people writing their first book. So I'm learning to be book marketer. My daughter's helping me. I just got on TikTok literally less than a week ago. She's helping me with an Instagram page. I'm trying to put more posts on social media. And my publisher challenged me and said, I'd like to get you on 50 podcasts by year end. You, Tyler, are my number 3.
Number 3.
Yeah. And so and it took me a while because I had this kind of love-hate relationship with it. Even though with the company I owned before, I had a background in marketing. Mm-hmm. We always marketed our brands. I've never marketed myself before. I always would hide. Yeah. And so new level of vulnerability, big time. And I enjoy writing. Maybe I'm not to maybe call myself a writer, but the marketing aspect has taken me away from the writer. But I told Wendy and a few others, like, I'm going to do it hard to the end of the year and see what happens after that. So I had started 2 or 3 other books, but they're on hold right now. Decided I'm going to become book marketer.
All in for this right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I need some fancy, witty way to close this.
Oh, okay.
If you had a fancy, witty way to close a podcast, what would it be?
Well, first of all, I think I would express enormous gratitude for you coming all the way out here and doing this. And I would express gratitude to you for having the courage to have your own dang podcast. I think that's so cool. And it must be fun interviewing a wide variety of people. And grateful, Tyler, that you shared your story with me. There's so much shit in there I didn't know about you. I had no idea what a phenomenal athlete you were and how freaking hard you were on your body sometimes. I thought I was hard on my body, but you took it to a whole new level. And just grateful that we're sitting here talking together.
Wow, that's perfect.
Okay.
None of that was on the sheet. You had it all in there.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much for inviting me over. It's a pleasure to have the things that you have done in your life have helped enrich my life. And it's like the synchronicities just keep going.
John Latta, y'all. Balanced, flowing, questioning, yet knowing. I had such a great time connecting with this interview. You can find more about John at johndavidlatta.com. Find him on Instagram at the same name. He's even on TikTok. You can find the book, The Synchronicity of Love, at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Meanwhile, any questions or comments you about me and this podcast can be sent to lumbertronic@gmail.com. Until next time, keep sharing your stories.